Every kite school in the world that I know of advertises that they're serious about safety. The reality on the ground, unfortunately, is that that may or may not be the case. We see a lot of sloppy procedures out there, and this video is designed to give you some things to look at so you can have an idea if some lessons are being done with the best practices for safety in mind. Now, this is not an overview of whether the lessons are good or not in general. That would also involve thinking about things like, is the instructor using the time in the most efficient way? Is he addressing the psychological needs of that particular student in that situation? Is he bringing out the material in the right order? Is the equipment good? All that sort of thing. This is just about safety procedures. Okay, so this talk is designed for people who are thinking about taking lessons. It's for administrators who may not have a deep knowledge of kiting practices but still want to see their clients taken care of in the safest possible way, and for instructors. The points that we're going to talk about come under a few basic principles. One of them is a kite that has enough power to get a person riding also has enough power to, for example, lift a kiter who weighs 80 kilograms 10-15 meters in the air or in a different direction, in which case the kiter becomes a projectile that can do a lot of damage either to themselves or to some bystander who has been placed in the danger zone of the kiter as a result of some bad decision that was made. The second principle, of course, is that kite lines, which may have a breaking strength of several hundred kilos, will cut like a knife through muscle right to the bone if they're under tension. Don't worry, that's just his finger. So the corollaries to this are, once we've moved past the first couple of hours on the beach with a trainer kite, which hopefully are on short lines, we want to make sure that when we're on a fully powered kite, we spend as minimum time as possible on the beach, and we avoid as much as possible having obstructions or people within our danger zone or our drop zone. The general rule is launch your kite, keep it low, proceed directly to at least waist deep water. You should have checked your tuning before the kite leaves your helper's hand. Putting the kite at 12 o'clock on the beach puts you in a very vulnerable position, because at that point you're susceptible not only to gusts, or in this case thermal, which will send you straight up and then down. You're also susceptible to, if the kite luffs and falls, it'll fall directly into the power zone, in which case you're going for a drag. These people, notice the kite instructor backstalled that kite into the power zone, by the way. These people were smart enough to choose a wide open space. Unfortunately, many of the places where people learn how to kite are much more limited in terms of space, and as I often say to my students, if the kite's going to drag you 7 meters but there's a concrete wall 6 meters away from you, that's not going to end well. Okay, so let's take a look at a few photos. This instructor has placed both him and one student directly in the drop zone of the kite held by the other student. These students are not being taught the good habits and the responsibility to plan the way they do things so that they're keeping their downwind area clear. Here's a guy, kite at 12 o'clock, looking down at the ground, no 360-degree awareness. Guys, do your blah 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 first, then launch your kite and go out into the water with your student. I hope this instructor here is not about to pass the kite to their student, because this kite is quite overpowered. As you can see, her bar is nearly all the way out. The kite's at 12 o'clock, talking and talking. Anybody downwind is being put in danger, as well as the kiter herself. You see in all these nice happy photos, where's the photographer standing? Exactly downwind of the kite in the danger zone. If the photographer knows anything about kite surfing, they shouldn't feel comfortable standing in that area. Also, the person with the kite should know better than to let people stand right in their drop zone. That brings me to walking around the beach unnecessarily with a kite in the air, walking back upwind. Unfortunately, too many instructors think that this is okay. If you've just stepped on a sea urchin or a piece of broken glass or rusty metal, it's much more difficult to focus on downing your kite safely. Now, if you're the only one on the beach and want to put yourself in danger, that's your business, but as soon as there's somebody else that's downwind, you're involving them as well. Being on the beach with the kite in the air indicates, under right-of-way conventions, that you've claimed that space around you and a clear path out to sea, so nobody in the area can launch, land, or ride there. So it's a matter of not only safety, but showing consideration to other riders. One of our goals then is to teach the awareness and the planning to prevent our kite's wind window from overlapping with another's. This guy just got dragged about 30 meters at least, by the way. Let's talk about personal protective equipment. For students at least, helmets, impact vests, and if necessary, shoes should be used at all time. Probably don't need to say too much more about that. I mentioned it before that as soon as we launch the kite, we proceed directly to waist deep water. Any body dragging, riding, or water starting needs to be done in deep enough water. My first year of teaching, I had a guy go to body drag in about this much water, ripped his knee wide open on a sharp rock that just happened to be there. The rest of the beach was complete sand. So that 3 feet of water depth is your protection against impact on the bottom, whether you're falling from height or getting dragged along. Okay, here's another one. The chicken loop should be attached as one of the last things you do in your launch procedure. After your kite is in launch position, after you've done your other line checks, and when you land your kite, it should be the first thing that you do is unhook your chicken loop. We see guys standing around or running around with their chicken loop still attached, kites on the ground, kites being held by somebody else. If they drop the kite, if the kite blows away, there's no reason for you to be attached to your kite at that point. So if your kite's not in the air, make sure your chicken loop is not attached. In this situation, when you're walking around the beach, yes, your safety leash should be attached, but no, your chicken loop shouldn't be. And if you're holding onto the bar only, then the kite will power up if the person drops it. So hold on to that chicken loop the entire time while she's talking to her helper, while she's telling him how to pick up the kite, walk over to the beach. This whole time she's been hooked in. Now's about the time that she needs to check her lines, then hook in, do her 360 check, and then she can launch. The person holding the kite should be positioned right at the water's edge to minimize the distance she has to walk, and the board should be in her path of travel so that she can reach down and pick it up on her way to the water with the kite still at 2 o'clock. This is not a well-planned launch. One last thing to think about: when your kite instructors are riding on their own free time, are they doing it in a safe way, or are they taking unnecessary risk, jumping too close to the beach, not leaving space downwind? I tell my kite instructors that when they're riding, their students are watching them, and they should be a representative for the school as well as for good kite practices in general. Do you see this? Guy on the beach narrowly missed getting sliced by the lines of this guy's kite. Now, this may be a good rider who can do very nice tricks, but he does not exercise the judgment to do it far enough away that he doesn't endanger the other people on the beach. No disrespect to any kiter or any instructor in this video. I've done plenty of stupid and ignorant things myself over the years. The idea, though, is to move past the point of ignorance to the point of awareness. The overwhelming majority of accidents, conflicts, and scary moments that happen out there are preventable. They're the result of inadequate procedures, lack of awareness, which either opens up the possibility of something going wrong in the first place, or leaves the student or kiter unprepared for dealing with things when they do start to go wrong. Often these are attributed to the random element, like a gust of wind, or a line breaking, or somebody appearing out of nowhere. But everything that happens out there is the result of a decision that's been made, or maybe a decision that should have been made but wasn't made. Like, for example, maybe these aren't the right conditions to be out kitesurfing in the first place. And that's really the responsibility of the kite instructor, not just to get their people riding, but to make sure they have a clear understanding of this. Having said all that, there are times when there's just not much you can do. So I'm going to run this clip of a death loop in the background while we review a few of the basic red flags to keep an eye out for. This list is not exhaustive. There are a lot of other things to think about, like, has the student learned his right-of-way conventions? Have they actually done a kite recovery and a deep water self-rescue from start to finish? Has the instructor worked with the student throughout the lesson to develop a good 360-degree awareness? Has the instructor checked before the lesson, not only for the ability to swim well, but for medical conditions? Blood sugar issues like diabetes is a very common one. Stress and adrenaline in someone who already has epilepsy can trigger a seizure, and being in deep water attached to a kite is not a good place to have a seizure. Most likely will result in death. So if you're watching a lesson in progress and you see instructors or students walking around the beach with the kite in the air, see them walking back upwind instead of carrying the kite back upwind, if you see them standing around talking with the kite at 12 o'clock, if you see students launching their kites without doing a 360-degree check first, or without sheeting the bar all the way out and then in to check for back line tension. Do you see people launching their kites when there's someone or some obstacle just downwind of them? Sometimes you have to fudge this, but if there's another spot just a few meters away where you have a clear launch zone, then it's a bad decision not to go and launch there instead. And if you see students missing their helmets or their impact vests or boots, if it's a place that requires boots, those are all things to look out for. In our industry, a large percentage of instructors and kiters in practice consider these safety standards to be too high for them to implement consistently. They might not say it in so many words. Instead, they might say things like, well, it's really not that risky. Kites these days have good depowerability and good safety systems. Or they might say, it's just not practical in our location. It's too crowded. Or, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years and haven't had an accident yet. The first two are actually arguments for teaching people to do things the right way. Crowded conditions require tighter procedures. And better depowerability in kites means that people are taking out bigger kites. And without developing the reflexes and the habit and the muscle memory to overcome our instinct to pull the bar when we're scared, but to let go of the bar or open the quick release, this would be a good time for him to do that, by the way. Without that, depowerability or a good safety system isn't really going to help you. Let's take a look at that one again. When we're scared, our brains slow down. When we panic, our brains stop. And if you don't have your training and your reflexes and your muscle memory to rely on, then your safety system is not going to get you out of the situation you've put yourself in. And the last one is a warning sign. Complacency can be the most dangerous mindset that results in an injury and accident. The first step to an accident involves the false belief that experience makes you invulnerable. That, along with rushing, overexcitement, frustration, and fatigue, is one of the main causes of accidents. So sometimes you'll see instructors doing stuff like this, playing around, jumping on the beach, because they're quite confident that they have good kite control. I know 2 people who have broken their legs this way, both of who are good experienced kiters. This also sets a bad example for the students. Notice his quick release is still not opened. His kite's not secure. It's rolling around in the waves. At any point in time, it could catch power, shoot up into the air, and drag him quite a bit further. Now that you have some specifics, go ahead down to your local kite beach, have a look around, think about what you're looking at, and make some decisions for yourself.